Mic's on unless
Oh.
unless you are at work or someplace where there's a lot of background noise. You can message me in chat. I'll try to keep that open. If I don't see anything, make sure you pop in and just make sure that I reference back to chat. Have any of you written offers before? Just give me a quick yes or no to see where we're at. Okay, no from Greg, not yet. And Vicky, how about you?
Ma, someone's talking to you.
No worries. Okay, good job, Caddy, for new construction there. Beautiful. All right, well, we are gonna jump into it. I've put together just some sample contract with just various addenda. If you've not written an offer before, this is going to feel a little overwhelming, but hopefully it'll get you used to looking at a contract, seeing what options there are with contracts, and being familiar of how to find everything on the MLS. So I am gonna switch this over, share my screen. If it wants to here. Okay, you should have the real estate purchase contract in front of you, or actually right here, you're gonna see the MLS with a home on Park Ridge. Do you have the correct screen in front of you? Yes, shout outs, anything? Okay. If not, let me know. So coming over, I just used this as an example because I wanted a property that was built before 1978. Does anybody know why, what we're going to need if a home is built before 1978?
Isn't that the paint disclosure? The
The
lead,
lead-based
the
paint,
lead base.
exactly. Okay, perfect. All right, so we added that in. So we're here on the MLS. I pulled up, go under forms. You can go right to the Legacy Forms library, and then if you've previously saved it, then you can go back and reference. So I will make sure to save them because if I'm doing addenda later on where I need to put additional addenda to the contract, I don't want to retype everything from scratch. So if I save it, then I can just go in and rename from addendum 1 to addendum 4, or wherever we happen to be. You want to keep your addenda as clean as possible. Your job is to make it so that there's no ambiguity. With the offer, you want to make sure that everything is just absolutely clear. You don't want it as clear as mud. You want it as clear as water so that everybody understands the terms that are being written and agreed upon. There are times that I get just the messiest addenda on the other side of the transaction, and I will do a clarification addendum just to make sure that everybody clearly understands what is going on in this contract and that there's no question later on, because I'm telling you, your clients are going to get really cranky with you if they've in their mind are agreeing to one thing and it's actually something else, and there becomes a battle on that later. So before you can submit an offer, you've got to have already done 3 things. You need that buyer broker agreement in place, the signed buyer broker agreement, verified pre-approval letter from the lender, and of course you will have had to go out and tour homes. There's nothing I hate more than to get those random offers where somebody's just throwing offers at any property online and you're like, have you even walked in the property? Let's not waste all of our time if this isn't really what you want. I want to make sure that people who have submitted the offer are not doing it blind. A lot of times those will come from investors and investment companies. The agent is just throwing out offers wherever they go, and they may or may not actually be a serious buyer who is going to follow through if they get their offer accepted. So that is one of the things we're going to be verifying as we go through. The buyer consultations are huge to prepare your client for making an offer in the current market. You want to make sure that they trust you, that they trust your opinion. I had a situation where recently that an agent from Vegas referred her nieces over to me for to put together an offer and to find a property for them. So as we're going out, we find just an amazing home. It was everything they wanted, and they're getting advice from their aunt that it's in Vegas with the Vegas market. So it's completely different than what our market is here in Salt Lake. They're wanting to go in, offer 80% of the current market value, get a full 6% in seller paid closing costs. They're just going on and on and on with the list of how they want to put these offers together. So as I'm giving them advice on where we should structure this offer, knowing that there's multiple offers on the table, they're coming back, and one of the buyers is a therapist, a counselor, and she's like, I feel like you're not really listening to us, that we're telling you how we want to structure the offer and you're telling us something completely different. And I appreciated that so much. I'm like, thank you for letting me know your frustration. Never take things personal. Just know that it's an education. It's an educating opportunity to be able to teach your clients what your knowledge is of the current market. And so I, let them know that, we've got two ways of structuring an offer. One, again, take us back to 2022. You guys weren't aware of how insane the market is. I mean, my properties, we had like 30 offers on every property that we had out there because of the shortage of the homes on the market and the super low interest rates. So when you're going in, throwing offers at 12 different properties going, I don't care, it has a roof and 4 walls, it'll work for now. That is going to be a very different offer than when they find a home that is right next door to their best friend and babysitter, and it's in the perfect price point, and it has the kitchen that they've dreamed of forever, and the best school district, and there's only one home in the entire neighborhood that they've been searching in forever. That is going to be we have to get this home. So what do we need to do to structure it, the offer, in order to get it? So again, with explaining that, they were able to understand that coming in with if it's going to work for the right price offer versus this is our home, get it for me no matter what offer. Actually used that analogy when I was out buying a car a couple of weeks ago in Las Vegas, where I just said, this is that one that if I get it for the right price, I love it. Otherwise, I am not so in love with it. I'm willing to pay anything for it. So that is a great conversation to have. Make sure that you go over that with your clients so that you understand where they are coming from and they understand that they need to trust you as you're giving them advice on where to structure that offer. Okay, so you've done that buyer consultation. They trust you. There are certain things that they can do that will increase their chances of being the primary offer in a multiple offer situation. And again, when you're going through multiple offers, you're going to have to be a whole lot more competitive than if that home is sat on the market for 120 plus days and there are no offers and they've already dropped the price 8 times and they're just desperate to get out of it. So you want to have the knowledge of the market, how the home is priced in relation to the surrounding homes, how long their days on market have been. Those are just a few of the things you're going to want to look at. So if we're looking at my sample property here, so I flipped it over to the MLS. This is a home on 7400 South, about 1900 East. It's been on the market 183 days. This one is under contract. It's in backup status. You can check the history of the property. So sometimes I'll have a client who says, I'm in love with this home. It's in backup status. What's the story on it? Hit history, and you can go through and see, okay, it looks like it was under contract once, went back to backup, and then it came out, how often, how far apart was this? So this can tell me that it sat on the market for a couple of months, not a lot of action, dropped the price. Then they went under contract, and then the buyers got a little bit squirrely. They weren't sure if they were going to maybe pull through with financing. But now that we are into March, the last time they changed it from active to backup was a month ago, they should be ready to close within another week. So that kind of gives you an overview of where they are in the process. And then that will help you structure your offer as well. If they've gone under contract 5 times within days of being back on the market, they're still very optimistic that they're going to get a higher price. The next thing you want to do is make sure you've talked to your buyer's lender. Don't just assume, don't just take that pre-approval letter. If you were referring them to your preferred lender, of course, this is somebody you have a relationship with, you know how your lender is working, but you need to know that that buyer is solid. You do not want to go out shopping at the top of their price point if the buyer is like, look, their margins are really, really tight. We would be more comfortable down in this price point. They can go up here, but we're going to be holding our breath. You know, if they put one extra gas charge on their credit card so that their DTI is too high, that's going to be a problem. So talk to their lender, find out what their max purchase price is, really what their comfort purchase price is. The other thing I do in my buyer consultation is we are not looking at the price of the home, we are looking at the price of the payment, because they may qualify for a $2 million home, but they may not want the payment on a $2 million home. So I make sure as the buyer is talking to their lender that they understand what that payment's going to be. You do not want to waste your time getting under contract on a property, and a week before closing, all of a sudden they're like, well, I had no idea my payment was going to be $6,000. You know, we can't afford that. You want to make sure all those discussions have been had ahead of time so that you're not wasting everybody's time and creating disappointment for both the buyer and the seller and the agents. After all that work, you're not getting paid. You need to find out what kind of loan that they can qualify for. Are they going FHA? Can they go conventional if they need to? Certain properties are not going to qualify for an FHA loan. And if they fall in love with a property that does not qualify for it, again, you've just wasted your time showing them properties that are not going to qualify FHA. So that's a whole other thing. You're going to get used to what will qualify, what FHA required requirements are with a property for an FHA backed loan. We can go over that another time, but has the lender verified their down payment? Do they have the funds? Where are those funds coming from? Are they coming from a family member? Does the family member realize that they're going to have to show copies of their bank statement? It's not just mom and dad saying, oh yeah, we can give you $10,000. There's some work that goes into that. So we have to make sure that conversation has been had. Has the lender already done their verification of employment? Have they told them what to expect for closing costs? I will tell you, most buyers do not understand the difference of what their down payment's going to be and that they have to pay closing costs in addition to that. So are we going to have to ask for closing costs from the seller in order for them to qualify? Those are things that we need to make sure that they understand is how much their closing costs are going to be. Do they have those funds in addition to their down payment? How much time does the lender need for financing and appraising deadlines? Before you structure your offer, you need to know what those deadlines need to be. You don't want to put down a week for financing and appraisal to secure a home and find out that the lender needs 3 weeks, because then you're, you know, going through a huge mess and trying to get extensions and explaining why you didn't know ahead of time. How long do they need for settlement? There are lenders who can close a loan in 7 days. That is also going to depend on the type of loan program and how responsive the client is to getting their documentation in. If they're slow in getting docs to the lender, there's nothing that loan officer can do to move it along any faster. So you need to know how much time they need for settlement. Do they offer pre-underwriting options to speed up deadlines? So if you know you're going to be competing, or that in order for the buyer to accept this significantly lower offer, where you can strengthen it is with shorter timeframes for closing. You need to know what programs does the lender offer to be able to secure that at a lesser price. And is there anything else about their company or this buyer that they can use to sell their offer to the buyer, or to present the offer to the seller, to make sure that the seller knows that they are solid? Anything that they can give you that you can then share with the other side is going to help you get that offer accepted. a strong lender is really going to help out. So make sure you get somebody who you have amazing communication with, especially if any issues comes up. It's better to be prepared. I have a buyer on one of my listings that we actually had to cancel the contract and then do a reinstatement of contract after they ended up moving to a different lender. The lender that they were working with went out of the country on vacation, didn't have anybody backing up their loan, totally ghosted them during this time. And then they were afraid because they were missing their deadlines. So they ended up doing a cancellation of contract. And then within 3 days, started working with a different loan officer who was super on the ball, got them pre-approved through initial underwriting really fast, and we were able to reinstate the contract and move forward. So there are, a good lender is going to make or break it. Okay. All right, so let's come back to the actual contract. Any questions so far? I'm going kind of fast because there's a lot that we want to cover, but I want to stop and give you guys a chance to ask clarifying questions. You can put it in a chat or.
Yeah, Amber asked a question in the chat.
Oh, perfect. Okay, let's see. Amber's written contacts. Why would a listing agent put backup even after the buyer is very strong in the offer? Okay, so that is a really great question. Most of the time, selfishly, I like to put that my contracts are under, or that my listing is under contract, because it stops the days on market. So that 183 days includes time that it's in backup position. So selfishly, it's really nice for your own stats to just throw it into under contract. And if the home is owner occupied, most sellers do not want to have to keep cleaning their house every day and making it spotless and show ready if they've got a solid buyer. However, with my circumstance with that buyer that backed out and then we reinstated, now we've got just that little bit of insecurity there, and the market is getting a little bit busier. We're getting a lot more buyers requesting showings, and it's giving me that opportunity to leverage that so that they're not coming back at us for a lot of repairs. So there were 2 reasons I left it in backup status. The one was because I had a little insecurity because they already backed out once, and I want to keep that option open. And the home is vacant, so it's easy to show, which we've had a ton of showings ever since it did go back into backup position. Also, it is giving me that leverage where when they were doing their home inspection, I was able to go back to the buyer's agent and say, look, we have had 8 showings this week. I've got a lot of really interested people. We don't want you to be nitpicky about these repairs. They've already given you X amount in closing costs. We want to make sure that your buyer's not being unreasonable. So it gave us leverage in negotiations on repairs, knowing that additional buyers were coming through and that they were very interested if the primary one drops out. So those are 2 reasons why you might want to do that. Like this one was in under contract status and then changed to backup. That could be that maybe there was an issue with either the repairs that they're negotiating or the buyer was being non-responsive, not getting their documents in fast enough, or that maybe there were some little hiccups coming up on their financing. So those are some reasons that it's like, let's not wait, let's open that opportunity to getting showings in. So those are just a few reasons why you would put it in backup status. Otherwise, if you've got a really solid buyer, your home is occupied, they've got 5 kids that they don't want to keep cleaning the house every second, then just put it straight to under contract, and it helps your market stats because it reduces the days on market. Okay, hopefully that is helpful. And I love that we've got in here that Vicky's been practicing her contracts, because that is the best thing you guys can do, is be practicing market analysis, doing CMAs, and use your own property, use any random property, something in your neighborhood, and be pulling market analysis together and then comparing it to that sold property, something that sold in the last 30 days. See if you're coming to that same price point. And also practicing putting these contracts together so that you're not stumbling over your tongue as you're trying to explain the contract, like I am right now. Okay, so a couple of things that I look at when I'm looking at a contract. We've got the purchase price of let's see, the list price was $6.99. The original list price was $7.59. So we know they've already taken a pretty big hit. They may have been optimistically priced in the beginning. And, I let my sellers know we need to be in that sweet spot. We don't want to optimistically price it because we are going to lose the buyers that are really looking in the price point that our home needs to be listed at. We see the number of days on market. We see why it's been on the market that long. Another thing that you're going to be doing when you're writing up an offer, make sure you're checking the tax ID to find out the current name of the seller on that listing. So whatever that happens to be, you're going to be checking that out. Don't be lazy and putting owner of record on there. Sometimes they will go ahead and see they've put owner on record down here rather than writing out the name that they want it to be under. But you can get the actual name off of that tax ID or just look it up on the county assessor. This is a link to the county assessor. I actually have a county assessor one pulled up over here, if it's still here, that I'll flip to real quick. So this is one where you can just see all the information on it. You've got the names of them. You can get into your tax ID information and everything from there, just from going to the Salt Lake County Assessor or whatever county that they're in. Some of them are more user-friendly than others. Okay, and then you're going to look at the remarks and the agent remarks to see if there is anything special that they are putting in here. For instance, this one says earnest money must be held with your real estate brokerage or mine, not a title company. So that's one addenda that I did not put over here to look at, but we're with KW, which is awesome. So we're going to put it with our brokerage. But when you're accepting an offer, that's something you need to be aware of. Let's go to the contract and I will tell you a little bit more why. Okay, so when you're in here in the purchase contract, and I've got a whole bunch of addenda that we can go through, you're going to come up, auto populate. We're going to put in the MLS number, and which I've already done previously. And then personally, I don't use the MLS for my address book because again, right now, we don't own the MLS and I don't want any company that owns the MLS to have access to my database. So I don't put my information in there. That's just through command. You can also do all these contracts through command. I just die hard and I've always used the MLS because it's just super easy to navigate. Take all the MLS classes that you can at the board because they will be very helpful. And if you can't get to the in-person classes, follow along. They've got all the tutorials and everything online. So we've got the full listing address with the county. It auto-populates the tax ID. If it doesn't, you need to add it in. Listing inclusions. If there's again anything separate in here, say right here on exclusions, they've added in something that is not typical, or inclusions. Say they're excluding, this totally happens, but they're excluding the rose bushes to the left of the front steps. That has happened because the rose bush has been given to them by a family member who's now passed away and they want to take it with them. So you can exclude anything in that contract. You just need to make sure it's on the MLS and you need to make sure that it's in the contract itself so that there's no question about it. Okay, and then you're going to add in your buyer's name. So Joe Smith, buyer agent office, all this should, populate because you are coming in with this being your client. It'll have all your information. And again, I don't put in my buyer address on here. Seller name, say Mike Jones. Okay. And then the seller's information is on here. The date of the offer would be today. And the date. So then you're going to make sure all of your information is in here. You're going to fill and update the fields. And after that says success, then you can get rid of the auto-populate forms. Okay, any questions so far? I don't see anything in chat, but I moved it over so it'd be easier to look at. Okay, so you've got the beginning of the purchase contract, the earnest money in the amount of, now your earnest money, this is when you're looking at it from a buyer side. Remember that you need to do everything you can to protect this earnest money. You don't want to put in such a huge amount that it is going to punch them in the gut if they lose it for any reason. You are also going to want to make sure that it's strong enough that the seller takes you seriously. So a good rule of thumb is 1% of the purchase price to go down for the earnest money. Some people insist on that, others don't. It really, again, depends on, I'm looking at the amount of time it's on the market, if I'm competing against multiple offers. When we went through the housing boom in 2020, you're looking at, I mean, we were getting $10,000, $20,000 earnest monies, non-refundable upon acceptance. I mean, that was just increasing liability everywhere. So we was really grateful when that went away, because that really puts a lot of pressure on everybody. If you're saying it's released to the seller immediately upon acceptance, along with crumble cookies and ski passes, the weirdest things were being put in contracts back then. In that hot market. And so you just want to make sure that you're protecting your client and that they understand that there are deadlines that are in place to protect them, but that they are not risking more than they are comfortable with if for some reason they have to back out. And there are crazy reasons. I had a buyer on one of my listings who their sister, it was a darling 3-bedroom house, but their sister had been in a car accident and passed away, and they got custody of her 5 children, and a 3-bedroom house was no longer going to work in addition to their children. So there are things that do happen that are unavoidable. Many things are avoidable, like if they decided to go out and buy a brand new Hummer and no longer can qualify for the home. But there are things that are unavoidable. So we want to make sure that they're protected. Okay, so earnest money in the amount, let's just say $5,000 on this one. And I put in the form of a check or wire, because I give them the option, my clients the option of using the Earnest app, which is super slick and easy. Or I can go pick up a check from them if they're not comfortable transferring funds through the app. And then they just make out the check to KW Utah Realtors. I pick it up, I take it to the front desk. Never leave that check just floating around in no man's land. You've got to have it deposited within a couple of days. So make sure that you understand that they have the 4 calendar days to deposit the earnest money into the brokerage account. So you do need to make sure it's to the brokerage and plenty of time for them to do the deposit. Okay. Address of the property. And you've got to make sure that tax ID number is correct. Otherwise, remember, everything you put in the contract could be a basis for the seller to have some rights to back out. Contracts heavily favor the buyer, except in the case of a builder contract. New construction favors the builder every time. But otherwise, contracts really heavily favor the buyer, where the buyer has opportunities to back out, where the seller does not. The seller is committed to the contract. Then you're going to understand all the included items. If you guys have been reviewing the contract, I'm not going to go over all the nitty-gritties. Make sure that you read through and understand the contract in general. And we're just talking about how to make the offer and make it stick, make sure your clients get their home. And then, so you want to make sure that all of this is covered accurately, including anything additional that are in the remarks or comments. And again, with anything that is excluded. So we're not planning to buy any items of personal property. If that changes later, we can always do it with an addenda. Usually lenders don't like to see anything added in here because they don't want to loan funds on something that's replaceable. All right, this one doesn't have any excluded items. So if there were, we could add that in here. or just non-applicable. Water service, again, most properties are not going to have specific water shares that are attached to them because of the type of areas that we live in. But if it does, just know that they would be transferred at closing unless otherwise specifically excluded from the sale. So purchase price on this, let's just go with some even numbers. We've got $650, earnest money deposit was $5,000. We're not going to give any additional earnest money deposit, new loan amount. Maybe they're only doing $300 for the loan, 0 on seller financing, balance of the purchase price, do your math from there. So, oh, somebody do math for me, 5. So 650 minus 3,000, 300,500 or 305,000. Somebody do math because my brain is not working this time of night. That should be an easy number. And if I wasn't on here. Okay, so 345. Is the amount they're bringing cash at settlement, and the total purchase price again matches back up here. Thank you to the 650. Okay, so for this one, we are going to, because I do have the addendum for it, we're going to say it is conditional upon the sale of real estate owned by the buyer. So in this scenario, buyer owns a townhome and they have to sell the townhome in order to purchase this one. So we have to put is. This is a new paragraph that was added just a few years ago because the what buyers agents were doing to try to get around it is putting the financing and appraisal addendum deadline as get their money back if their home doesn't sell in that amount of time, which is not fair to a seller who is deciding between multiple offers. And were not able to understand that this buyer that they're leaning towards, when 2 offers are very similar, they're like, well, this one gives us 10,000 more net at closing. But they were never told that they have to sell a home in order to purchase this one. So people were not disclosing that. So I have still seen in the early days, I've not seen it lately, but I still saw people trying to get away with putting is not conditional, which that would be an ethics violation. So make sure that you were being honest here. If their purchase cannot be done unless they sell another property, they have to, you have to put is conditional. And we'll have an addendum that addresses that. Okay, so again, I'm not going to go through all the verbiage as if you guys are brand new buyers. So possession, this is a good negotiating place. If the home is vacant, I always put upon recording. If there is a family in the home and they're trying to get out of town or out of state, or that they're having some, we just know it'll make it easier for their life, or they put that into the remarks, the agent remarks. If they have stated that they need a certain amount of time, often if my sellers are still in the property, I will ask for 48 or 72 hours before handing over possession. If they're out sooner, great, buyer can take possession earlier. Again, during the craziness, then we would often see 60 days. Now remember, certain lenders have requirements for how long a buyer can wait before taking possession of a home. Most of them, they have to be in the house within 90 days. Otherwise, they're in violation of breach of their loan terms. So say we want to give them 60 days because there are 20 offers in on this property, and we're saying, look, you guys can live there rent-free for, for up to 60 days after closing. We were doing that in the crazy days, but more likely than not, I usually just have something that's like 48 hours, 24 hours, 72 hours, whatever it is, just to help my sellers out if needed. So just make sure you're watching, take that time to read through the MLS to see if there's anything that they're requesting. I also make a phone call to the listing agent. If the, I always call that listing agent on a home that they are interested in. And if I can't reach them, I send them a text to follow up to just say, hey, give me a quick call regarding your listing at blah, blah, blah. And then I talk to the agent. I let them know I'm going to be a great person to work with. Hey, what do your sellers need? What would make them happy in a perfect offer? Or if you know that the home has been on the market for, 3 years, and you're like, so tell me a little bit about why the home has been on the market for so long. What are they looking for? Kind of what's been happening on your end. Find out. You're not going to learn anything if you don't ask questions. I try not to be too talkative because that will, I don't know, it irritates me if somebody's just trying to, blow smoke or just want to sit and talk about their cat and their dog all day. But, to be able to ask and establish that rapport, it's going to really go a long way in that agent presenting your offer to their client. So find out what they need. Find out if they need extra time for possession. Okay, special assessments, make sure if it is in an HOA or someplace with a special assessment that all the time I have people call and ask, hey, this is an HOA. Do you know if there's any assessments that are coming up that the seller is aware of? And, so make sure that you do ask that question as well. So in this one, I'm going to say if there's any special assessments, we're going to ask the seller to take care of it because they would have been assessed at the beginning of the year. So the seller would have been aware of it. Again, this can be changed depending on multiple offers. Again, the HOA change of ownership fees. I like nothing better than to, on the listing side, to have a buyer pay that. But again, those HOA change of ownership fees, they're sometimes called reinstatement fees, reinvestment fees, transfer fees. There's a whole bunch of names for them, and those can be really expensive. I know Daybreak, Eagle Mountain, some areas in Eagle Mountain, they're 0.5% of the purchase price. So if you're buying a home at 600,000, you're going to be paying $3,000 in addition to their down payment, in addition to their closing costs. So you want to make sure you understand what the transfer fee is, and then structure this according to what your client can do. So in this one, we're going to say we split it equally. Real estate brokerage commission. Again, you've probably heard that this is all brand new because of all the changes with NAR this last year. This is super easy to be able to put this information in here. Remember that you cannot ask the seller to pay more than what you have in your buyer broker agreement. So if you have 2% in your buyer broker agreement, you cannot put more than 2% here. Any questions about that? Any questions about why there was a lawsuit, what the lawsuit's about, why we have to do that?
So does that mean you have to put the same amount or same percentage in that blank box?
Vicki, I'm so sorry. I'm going to raise my volume here. I could not hear you. Can you say that again?
Oh, can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes. No, that's great.
I'm on the headphone. Sorry about it.
No worries.
So does it mean you have to put exactly same amount like the buyer broker agreement?
It has to be, it can't be any more than what's in your buyer broker agreement. So good or bad, I have on my buyer broker agreement, I always, for myself, now we're within the same brokerage, so we can talk commissions a little bit, but again, there's no set commission. It's what you charge, and what you're agreeing to charge with your client. For me, I explain it to my clients this way. I'm like, I charge 3% for my services. I want you to understand that we're going to do everything we can to get the seller to pay for my brokerage fee so that it does not have to come out of your pocket. However, if the seller is not willing to pay a full 3%, we can have a discussion about reducing the amount, you know, say, as long as it's above 2%, then I am okay with that. And you and I can do an addendum to this agreement up to 2%. However, if they will not pay 2% as a minimum, then we have to have a discussion about you paying the difference. So some people, there's many people, both in our brokerage and out, that they're like, it is 3% or it is 4%, whatever it is. And that is what I make, and you are going to pay the difference. So if they are not willing to pay that 3%, then you are going to have to come up with the difference in addition to that down payment, in addition to the closing costs. So again, for my clients, that's how I choose to do it. But I'm very clear that if it's under 2%, then we have to have a discussion about them paying the difference, and they will have to decide if this home is worth it at this price. So that's another thing going back to that, is when we're deciding about the offer and they're like, well, I don't know, should we do this or this? And I'm like, at what point are you willing to walk away? At what dollar amount are you going to say, this is my home, but I cannot go a penny above this? That is what we're going to look at with our negotiations. Even if we start lower, then I know that that's what their absolute max is, and that we cannot negotiate any higher than that if it goes back and forth. And that is that same thing with your commission discussion, is you are talking about, is it worth it to you for this particular home to have to pay the difference if the seller will not? And I let them know I will do everything I can to structure the offer in a way that the seller will cover that cost. And I tell them, in today's market, more than likely the sellers are expecting to pay the cost. However, in the future, another market may be completely different. So
Okay,
that's
thank
how I
you.
have that conversation. You bet. Any other questions?
I have another question too.
Sure.
So, you were talking about addendum. So if you start higher, you can do addendum later to reduce the
Yes.
percentage.
Yep, exactly. So this is your initial offer. So whenever you're doing a contract, you're presenting a brand new offer. This is a brand new offer going to them. If they counter back, they're essentially rejecting that offer and presenting a new offer with whatever changes they make. So everything in that contract will stay the same except for the changes made in the addendum. So every time an offer is countered, it is essentially rejected and represented with the new terms. So not with a brand new contract, but the addenda is what changes any portion of this. So we can ask for 10% here, and they can come back and they can decide, oh my gosh, that is crazy. There is no way we're going to even work with these buyers. We're just going to reject their offer, or just ignore them and ghost them, because that's the same as rejecting an offer if they just don't respond to it and the time lapses. Or they can come back and say, look, you know, you've asked for 3%, and they come back and say, with our numbers are super, super tight on this one, we can't do any more than 2.5%, or we can't do any more than 2.25%. And then you have to look at that and go back to your client and say, look, this is what they're willing to do. They are willing to pay your closing costs. They are willing to do this. They are willing to say yes to all these things, but they are not willing to pay the commission on this. So this portion will come out of your pocket. Or we can restructure it and say, well, maybe we'll pay our own closing costs and they'll pay that. I mean, there's just so many factors in each contract that breaks down financially, that there's different ways to negotiate that offer so that it comes out to your client's advantage. Or if not to their advantage, to what they're okay moving forward with.
Okay, great, thank you.
You bet. Anybody else? Okay, so on here, so we're gonna put 3%. And so does the seller and the buyer agree that the seller shall contribute the 3% of the purchase price to buyer's brokerage? Or if there's just a dollar amount, sometimes in a listing agreement that say it's $1 million listing, they don't want to pay, you know, tens of thousands of dollars. So they're saying, we agree to pay the buyer's brokerage no more than $25,000, whatever it happens to be. So you can, it's either or. So if there's nothing in here, then you just put non-applicable or just put a line through it. Try not to leave any blanks in a contract. To me, that's just lazy. If I see a contract that's just really nice, sharp and clean, it makes me feel like working with that agent is going to be a good experience. And that's what you want, is a good experience. There are definitely agents that if I get a couple of offers and I'm like, either look at an agent or look at a lender that I've had a really bad experience with, I'm going to have a really hard time really promoting their offer to my client. So you want to make sure that you are that agent that other people want to work with. I have also had offers that come in on my listings that I'm like, look, they're using this lender and this agent, they are golden. You know that when they approve them, that this buyer's they're gonna be able to complete it. They're gonna see it through to the finish line. So, you know, that has really helped me in promoting an offer for my seller, is by knowing that I really appreciate the people on the other side of the transaction. So be that person. Okay, so again, down here, confirmation of agency disclosure. She's representing the seller. I'm representing the buyer. We're not going to go through all these details. If I'm going on the buyer side, I am always going to do it conditional upon due diligence, conditional upon appraisal, and conditional upon financing. The only time I am not going to do that is if they're paying cash, because then an appraisal doesn't matter and their financing's already been verified. So we don't need to worry about that. Due diligence, again, if my client is super, super handy, they own a construction company, they've got a whole crew behind them. They're like, if we can get it for a great deal, we're going to waive our due diligence because we don't care about that. We already know that we're going to go in and do repairs. I had a client who bought this amazing property with tons of acreage, but the house tested super, super high in meth. And my clients were like, we don't care. We can go in and remediate it. He owned a construction company. And he's like, I'm totally fine with this. We can just waive our due diligence in order to get the price that we want. So those are things that you just have to know your clients. And you know, just because they watch HGTV does not mean that they can redo plumbing in a house. So just be very, very careful if you were waiving that due diligence, because if they do an inspection or move in and then find out the house has been a meth lab or has rotted pipes or whatever it is, and they're out of tens of thousands of dollars, you don't want them mad at you because you advise them to waive their due diligence. So be very, very careful here if you waive it. Same thing with the appraisal, same thing with their financing. Again, if you have a lender, say they're going conventional and they're putting 40% down in cash as their down payment, that lender's not going to need an appraisal most of the time. They're going to be like, yeah, it's over 20% of the value. They're going to be fine. We don't even need an appraisal. We can close fast, and they get the appraisal waiver. That is, again, a great place that you could waive this in order to make your offer more appealing. But make sure if you're waiving any of these conditions that that buyer is solid before you put their earnest money on the line, because that stops them from being able to back out if there are any difficulties during their loan. Okay. Now, again, when you have multiple offers, this is a really good section that they added in not so long ago, that has the buyer's right to cancel before the financing and appraisal deadline. Sorry, do you have questions? Okay, thought I heard it. Okay, so buyer's right to cancel. So this is saying that if the buyer is incredibly confident in their financing, that they know that they have got this loan in the bag, they have 850 credit scores, they have almost no debt, they are not worried about qualifying for this loan at all. This is a place that you can really strengthen their offer, that you're saying, okay, they've got $5,000 as earnest money. We are so confident that our Financing is solid, that if we have to back out due to our financing fall apart, we're willing to give you some or all of our earnest money. Say we're going to give you half of it. We're going to give you half of our earnest money if we had to back out due to financing. Now understand that they can still back out due to due diligence. They can still back out due to appraisal. This just covers their financing. So this is a really great place to strengthen an offer if you're going up against multiple ones. If you're not going against multiple offers and you're not trying to get anything crazy from them as far as the terms, then just put non-applicable. So that would be someplace if they have a home to sell and the buyer or the sellers are like, yeah, we just don't think you're going to sell your home in time. This would be a place that you could strengthen it and say, look, we're willing to put some money on the line here. Okay, so they can still cancel. They would just lose whatever was put up in this section. And you can just put a 0 there, make it even cleaner. Okay, and then this is a section, this used to be a place before they came up with this section, this used to be a place to strengthen your earnest money. I have never used it. I've never had a scenario where this would strengthen it, but this would be something that, trying to think of a situation. So no later than the due diligence or financing and appraisal that you're saying that you might be willing to deliver additional earnest money. Say you're only starting out with $1,000 earnest money and you're like, look, we're putting $1,000 on the line right here, but no later than our financing and appraisal deadline, we're willing to up this by $9,000. So you're going to get $10,000 worth of earnest money altogether, but so that you know that after our financing and appraisal deadline, we've got a lot of skin in the game, that might be a place to use it. Personally, I feel like this is a stronger section and resonates more with sellers right now than this one does, but this is another opportunity to strengthen your offer only if you need to. Again, we're going to say, yes, there are addenda. We are going to have a conditional upon or subject to sale addendum. We're going to have an FHA addendum. We're just going to go with all kinds of addenda in here. Here with the home warranty plan, this is something I always try to get for my buyers. Most sellers have been prepared by their listing agent that most buyers will ask for one. We have great home warranty companies that are our sponsors, our vendors in our office. Get to know them, find out what they do. They provide lunch for the office along with some of our other vendors. They rotate and they come in and kind of tell a little bit about what they do. Our sponsors, our vendor sponsors that I really like for home warranty are IBEX Home Warranty, Elevate Home Warranty, Acclaimed Home Warranty, One Home Protection Services, and there is one more gal that I met recently that I used and I really liked her too, and I just went completely blank on who she is. Her name is Michelle and I am going blank on her company, so I am sorry, but anyway, get to know the home warranty companies and what they provide, what protection they provide, so that you can use that to, you'll need to help your clients select one. And so I'm going to say, yes, we want a home warranty plan that will be chosen and ordered by the buyer, issued by a company selected by the buyer, but will be paid for at settlement by the seller. So home warranty plans are going to run anywhere from $450 to $700 and higher. I'm going to put $700 in there because I can get a really solid plan for my client for $700. I always love it on the listing side. If I see one that's only asking for $500, you can still get a decent plan. But IBEX and some of the companies have gone up to $700 for their best plan. And so I ask for it. If they want to come back and counter, they can. So, and then yada, 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 make sure you're reading through all this and understand it. What I was told in one of my classes that I took at the board with one of the attorneys is that you should always put may at the option of the parties for mediation. The reason why is that if your clients run into a really huge dispute with the other party, I mean, me personally, I'm like, let's just go to mediation, let's hammer it out. get it done, come to an agreement, save the court costs. However, your clients may want more options than just being stuck with only a mediation offer to start. It might be really big, it might be time sensitive, and they're like, no, we're just taking this to pursue any other options available through law. So I put may at the option of the parties. They can still go to mediation first, but it does give the opportunity to pursue any other remedies available at law. And if you read through all this verbiage, you're going to understand the different remedies that you have. Again, be very, very clear on all the verbiage throughout the contract so that you can explain it to your client and make sure that they understand what they are signing and putting this together, because there's nothing worse than somebody who's angry at you because they didn't understand what they were signing. So contract deadlines, seller disclosure deadline, that's the time frame of when you want the seller to provide all their documentation, their HOA docs, their finance, the finance or financials and the meeting minutes and everything involved with HOA, CCNRs, and there were seller property condition disclosures. You want to make sure you have those before you do your inspection, because if you get their property disclosures, and you find out that their toilet backs up every time they flush it, you're going to be like, okay, we might be out right now. We don't even want to go any further, and we don't want to waste any time. If they're having these kind of problems, we're going to be inheriting them. And so say we're going to give them a response time till tomorrow night. They may not respond till Saturday morning if they can't get a hold of each other. If we're under contract by the 9th or 10th, I wouldn't give any further past the 10th. You're just kind of looking like if you're over a weekend, if people can't be reached, if they're out of town, but you want to make sure that before you get your due diligence. This is another place for your due diligence deadline. It used to be that you could do a solid 2 weeks on your due diligence, and I still see that. It's great to have a full 2 weeks to do your due diligence. However, we all learned during the housing chaos in 2020, you can get your inspection and everything done within a week, get it off the plate, make sure that you're comfortable moving forward. This is a great place to strengthen your offer by doing a shorter due diligence. Just make sure that your home inspectors, and again, we've got great inspection companies that are vendors through our offices that we can give you if you don't already have somebody that you have a relationship with. This is a great place to be able to strengthen and say, yeah, we only need a week because we know we can get our inspector in there by Monday. If you're on a really short deadline and you just really want to strengthen your offer, call your inspector, your favorite inspector, and say, hey, look, we are really trying to be competitive with this offer. Can you be in there within 3 days, to get your inspection done? And during that inspection period is when they're going to check to make sure they can back out for any reason. This is why it's comforting to a seller to make sure that you have a short due diligence deadline, is because they can decide they don't like the way that the house smells when the sun hits it. It doesn't matter. They don't like the color of the roof. They don't like that they don't like the look of the neighbor next door pulled up and was blasting some music, and they're like, oh, that's going to happen every day. They can back out for any reason during that due diligence time frame. So that's something as a seller, when I'm a listing agent, I'm looking at that deadline. And if they're asking for something crazy, I'm like, can we tighten those days up? Because I want to make sure if we're choosing an offer that they're not going to stretch it for an entire 2 weeks and then back out for any reason. So that gives me comfort as a listing agent. So that's someplace that you can also provide some comfort on the buyer side. Or give them a full 2 weeks, and if they agree to that, well, then that's on them for allowing it. So say we're going to give this one a good week and a half. So we'll say the 19th. And then financing and appraisal deadline. For the most part, most lenders can do it with no problem in 3 weeks. So you're saying if today's the 6th, we get it accepted on the 7th, a response on the 7th, 1, 2, 3. We're asking for financing and appraisal on the 28th. Again, if you've got a lender that can close in 14 days, you can shorten up that time and make your offer even more special. And settlement deadline, again, most of them can close within 4 weeks. If somebody's trying to get like a 90-day closing or a 70-day closing, or even, I'm like, you should be able to close in 30 days, or your lender, I'm not very confident that your lender's going to be able to get it done. As a listing agent, my sellers are going to be taking their home off the market for that whole time. And if they back out at the 11th hour, they get to keep the earnest money and walk away. And my poor sellers have to start all over with getting somebody who's going to go under contract and then have their deadline start all over again. So try not to be unreasonable about these dates, but make sure you know the risk and that you've talked to the lenders to know exactly how much time they need to be able to confidently close without extensions, because everybody's frustrated if you need an extension on any of these deadlines. So make sure you're allowing enough time without being ridiculous in how much time you're asking. And then I usually like to have 24 hours for acceptance because I don't want any other offers to come in at. So if we're signing the offer tonight and getting it over to them, I'm going to ask them to respond by 5 o'clock tomorrow, unless they have stated something else in that either the conversation or on the MLS that they need more time. Then I'm like, hey, how quickly can your clients respond to this? And if they're like, look, they're out of town, the husband works nights, they can't really coordinate, then I can give them a little extra grace and give them some extra time. But otherwise, I'm going to say 5 o'clock p.m. tomorrow, I want an answer. That doesn't mean they have to answer by then, but it means that you're saying that your buyer has the chance to move on to another property if they've not responded by then. So when I'm again on the seller side, I'm saying, look, we have until 5 o'clock. If we love their offer and we don't want to risk losing them to a different property, let's go ahead and get it accepted and move forward. Otherwise, if you're countering, these deadlines don't matter. So this is something a lot of people don't understand, is when they send over, they're like, we need an extension because we need more time to put our counter together. You're like, it doesn't matter because this has already been rejected and they're presenting a new offer when they send it back. So hopefully that makes sense. So if they don't respond by 5 o'clock tomorrow because they're sending a counter, you're fine. If they are going to accept it, but they signed acceptance at 5:05 or at 6 o'clock tomorrow, then you need an addendum that extends that deadline so you're in compliance. Because otherwise you're going along and all of a sudden they're like, you know what, we just got an offer for 20,000 higher and we're going to back out of your offer because we were supposed to sign by 5 and we signed at 5:15 instead. So now there's a loophole for the seller to back out. So you want to make sure that everything is, that you understand where your deadlines are, and you're in compliance with when that response time is, or you present an addendum that everybody signs, that everybody's aware that it was signed after, accepted after that 5 o'clock p.m. So hopefully that makes sense. If they're going to accept it, they're going to check acceptance. If they're going to counter offer, they're going to put the addendum that they're going to counter offer. And if they're going to reject it, which honestly, I hardly ever see just straight out rejections. Normally I just get that, yeah, they're not going to move forward with this offer. It doesn't even come close. We're just too far apart. And they don't actually send a rejection. What was I going to say? There is something I was going to say with the counter offers. Anyway, I might think of it in a minute. Okay, so here's one of the addenda. This is just the general addendum. Say it's going to be addendum number 1. This is an addendum to our offer. A counter offer would be if we just send over that first one with nothing else and they're countering back to us. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Some agents don't. Oh, we are at 6:30. I'm going to have to let you guys go. Dang it. We already went through the original one. The one thing I do want to say is if they say they send over an original contract and then an addendum, your sellers agree to everything in the original contract, but not to whatever you write in the addendum. They do not sign acceptance on the original contract and counter on the addendum. Everything becomes a counter when they respond to you. So if you're even countering one item, then you're going to check counter on every piece of the contract. And in here, if you're practicing with these contracts, You can just drag and drop closing costs. You can drag and drop it there. You can load the select clause, and it automatically puts that verbiage in there, and so that it's reducing the amount of addenda that you need. Oh, thank you. All right, we'll take just a couple minutes then. Because that way, say you're putting one here and you want the appraisal addendum added, and you're gonna do disclosure of interest because they are a family member, your brother's buying a house, and you want to put all that together, then instead of doing 3 different addenda, everything is in this one, plus you could write any additional if you need to put number 4, rose bush next to the steps is included. So you can do it this way, or you can go to the closing cost addendum, which has the same verbiage here, and on that way. So the seller's contribution to the closing costs would be on that last one, whatever you need them to respond with. Again, I make sure that my buyers know the expectation of where we are in the current market, where a lot of sellers are willing to give closing costs right now because we have a little bit more inventory, and some of those properties like this one on for 180 days, it's been sitting a little bit slow. So I make sure that they understand that closing costs most likely will be something that we see. So asking for that is not a problem. Unless, of course, there's multiple offers or it's 2 days on the market, because then people are going to be like, yeah, you're 2 days on the market. There's no way we're giving you $20,000 in seller paid closing costs. You know, you're crazy. So look at all those things before you structure it. FHA loan addendum, VA loan. If your client is going FHA or VA, this is why you need to be talking to your lender to see if they need this addendum, to make sure. The reason why cash will always trump conventional. Conventional will trump FHA and VA. The reason why is cash, of course, you don't have to worry about their financing at all. Conventional, a lot more properties will be able to pass a conventional inspection. FHA, VA have certain things that they can't have any exposed wood, they can't have any unfinished flooring, they can't have any holes on the wall. Those things are all fine with conventional, but for FHA there is not. So they have to have railings everywhere. There's just some little ticky things that FHA and VA do require. The other thing is no matter where your financing and appraisal deadline is, if the home does not appraise by the FHA appraisal, appraiser, if it does not appraise for the purchase price, so we put down 650, say it only came in at 630. If it does not appraise there, even if it's past that appraisal deadline, your client can still back out and keep their earnest money. So that is why FHA and VA, first of all, it's just a little bit tickier. There's no problem with the loans. We take those loans all the time. My sellers, I always make sure that they understand that we've already done the walkthrough on the home. We know that if there's any FHA required repairs or certain things that we're going to need to do to make that happen. So I've already set that expectation with them. So there's no problem taking either of those loans, but you do want to be aware that that's why this addendum is there. A buyer can pay the difference. So say it comes in at 630 instead of 650, you can go ahead and negotiate, say, okay, it only came in at 630. My clients don't want to pay more than the home is valued at. So can, you know, and that's an opportunity to counter later on down the line. Or the buyer, say it's multiple offers and they're like, this is our home, we're willing to pay that difference of $20,000. We're going to come in and pay it on top of the loan. So it's just that FHA will allow that. They just won't allow it to be financed into the loan. There's something else with FHA. Oh, the other thing with FHA and VA loans, once that FHA appraisal is done, it stays with the property. So no matter which buyers come in, if you get another FHA buyer, that appraisal will stay with the property because it's assigned an FHA number. That's the other little bit of a risk there. Where conventional, it's a brand new appraisal with every buyer and they don't know what the last appraisal came back at. For VA and FHA, for FHA, that amount stays with the property for, oh my gosh, now I can't remember. Is it 3 months? Is it longer than that? Anyway, there's a rule. With VA, it only stays with the property for that VA buyer. So if it changes to another VA buyer, they'll still get a new appraisal done, but FHA won't. The appraised value, they still have to get an appraisal done, but the appraised value doesn't change. So hopefully, and this is, you don't need a different closing cost addendum, because right here, the amount of closing costs would be filled in on this one, on this addendum if it's FHA, so you wouldn't need the other one. Okay, guys, we've gone over a whole bunch of stuff. We haven't even gotten into all the other addenda, so make sure you're playing around with those, reading through what all the other addenda, just to give you an idea of some of the others that we have access to. There's the subject to sale of buyer's property. That's the one that we structured this originally with, that they have to sell their townhome in order to purchase this one. This is where you fill in that information, and this addendum has to be attached if they are selling a property in order to buy one. Now, remember, they might be able to afford it without selling their other one, and then you don't need any of this. But if they have to take the funds from the other property in order to purchase this one, you have to have this addendum in place. Another option is if you're a backup contract. So that's all something, take contracts classes with the MLS and contracts, and Lindsay, our awesome broker in our office, they do contracts classes regularly and questions before team meetings. So she is the go-to for our office, or any of the brokers through any of the offices are amazing. Lead-based paint addendum, because this home was built in 1974, anything built prior to 1978 has to have the lead-based paint addendum. Greg was right on top of that. Limited agency, so if both the buyer and the seller were within your same, using agents in your same brokerage, you have to have that limited agency consent agreement, that both the buyer and the seller, that they understand that they share the same principal broker. Just a CYA disclosure there. Disclosure of interest, if you are related to anybody in the transaction, that has to be disclosed. Just a couple more and then we'll get you out. And if you have a buyer that comes through an open house and is unrepresented, then you have to make sure that you cover that one as well, that they understand that you are in the acting in the interest of the listing agent or the seller, and that you are not representing them. And if you have asked for, 9 items in repairs, and this is your, and they're coming back and you're like, look, the furnace is shot, it doesn't even turn on, we want the seller to put in a new furnace. The seller's like, hey, we're not going to put in a new furnace, but we are, because we got it to turn on, but we'll give you extra closing costs, or we'll give you a purchase price reduction, or we agree to put in the new furnace. This is where that resolution of due diligence addendum comes in. So pretty much anything you have a question about, you can ask any of us. We are always here. Ask the team leader, ask the broker, ask anybody on the ALC, or ask your coaches here, because we are all here to help you and to guide you through it, because there's so much in here that you won't get it cemented into your head until you've gone through it a few times. And there's always something new in real estate, which makes it really fun. I'm a part of different mastermind groups. Like, you guys could join your own mastermind group if you get a relationship, or with other people that you get together, so that you have a text thread or an email thread that you're like, hey guys, I just had this come up. How would you handle it? We do that all the time, and we've been doing this forever. So don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions and to get advice on how to put things through. But always come down to your broker as the main, as your main go-to, or anybody on the ALC, but we'll help you. Don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. As the first few times you're putting together an offer, make sure that you have somebody review it before you submit it, to make sure nothing is missing or that there's nothing questionable in there. And that would be the best advice I can give you, is have somebody review your offer who's experienced before you submit it. And that's it. Any other last minute questions? Now that we've gone way over, sorry about that extra 15 minutes. You are so welcome.
No, thank you though.
Yeah, you bet. And my last name is, it's up on the screen. And so I easy email, it's lisac@kw.com. So you don't have to remember how to spell Caccavella. So you're good. Reach out anytime. Phone number, because I know when we do in-person classes, we usually put our phone numbers up there. My phone number is 801-688-8930. So if you ever need advice, don't hesitate to reach out. And I won't hold you hostage anymore.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for your time. We appreciate you.
You bet. Anytime. Good luck, you guys.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.